two,
Hello and welcome to the Clarinet Ninja Podcast. My name is Jay Hassler. As always, I'm doing my best to bring you the finest in clarinet education and entertainment. Playing us in today is Mr. James Danderfer. If you like what you're hearing, go ahead and check the show notes or the description to get more information about where you can find James's music. Don't forget to leave a comment, maybe give us a rating, like and subscribe if you're on YouTube. The thing that I would love for you to do more than anything else is be inspired, have some thoughts about my thoughts, and take this your own way. And in doing that, maybe pass this along to somebody else. I would love it if my joy for the clarinet could spread to more people and build a larger, stronger, more robust community. Today, I'm going solo, and I want to talk to you about something that I've been thinking about for a month and a half now, and that is, what does it mean to have a broken foot? Because I've had a broken foot, and I've been in the middle of learning what it means to have a broken foot. And before I go any further with this, I want to just acknowledge that I have just an inkling of an idea of what it means to live with mobility challenges, with physical challenges, that I know a lot of people live with full time. And I do want to just say I recognize the privilege of being able to be sort of a tourist in this arena, get some insight, and then get back to normal. And that's something that I know a lot of people don't have. A lot of people have challenges that are chronic or permanent. And I'm not saying I know what that's like. All I know is that I'm saying I know what having a broken foot is like for the length of time I've had it. The insight I have to give is not so much about that. It's about the specific experience of having a lifestyle change, the things I've seen differently, but most importantly, how does that relate to learning the clarinet? I broke my foot about 6 weeks ago, had surgery, and I've been sitting around because that is the process to get the outcome that I want. And it's all about the process to get the desired outcome. And that is something that with a broken foot, it's pretty easy. You do what the doctor says. And the protocol in the process is the same for everybody. You don't put any weight on that foot. You let the bone heal. You take an x-ray, and when the bone's healed, you can use it again. Pretty simple in its application. The surgery itself, I wouldn't call it simple. More on that later. But my point is this, it's the same process for everybody, and hopefully the same outcome for everybody. And that's something that is significantly different than the process and outcomes of learning the clarinet. Number one, we're all radically different people. And the process of learning the clarinet is going to be different for us because some things are going to, for whatever reason, land with people easier than other people. It's usually not all of playing the clarinet is easier for one person than the other person, although there are cases of that, and I think some of those cases are very famous, and those people play the clarinet extraordinarily well from an early age and continue on doing so. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the average sort of group of people that are learning the clarinet. And so just keep in mind, you could pick up the clarinet the same day as your neighbor. You're going to be in different places. And here's the interesting thing. Where you are after 1 week does not imply where you're going to be after 1 month. 1 month doesn't imply where you're going to be after 6 months. 6 months does not necessarily imply where you're going to be after a year. After that point, you start to have a trajectory that is a thing. But prior to that, particularly, there's going to be a nonlinear rate of change. And a lot of that has to do with how well you practice, how well you take information. And here's the thing. How well do you deal with insecurity and uncertainty? Because there's a lot of that in playing the clarinet. That's the thing, right? That is different about healing my foot, which is simple. Sit and record podcasts, right? Sit and, write stuff for your Clarinet Ninja Dojo. Listen to music. You can even play the clarinet. I can do these things, right? But what I can't do is go out and be in the world. I've been told that it's a bad idea for me to go out there and experience the world the way that I used to. Here's the thing I do know. I do know I'm doing the right thing. And I do know the outcome within a certain percentage of, these are the outcomes. Foot is healed by this time. Or foot isn't healed by this time. And there's a defined way to determine that outcome. You take an x-ray and you talk to the doctor. right? So it's checkbox, 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 and then you're done. That outcome is going to be largely the same from person to person. Playing the clarinet is not like that. We have a process, but that process is different for everybody. The length of time for that process is different for everybody, and the outcome is different for everybody. But even more than that, the desired outcome is different for everybody, right? So it's kind of the opposite. It's all over the map in terms of how long is this going to take? What's it going to take to get there? And what is it even that I want? And then add in this idea, what you want at the end of the process might not be what you thought you wanted at the beginning of the process, which is all different than I want my foot to be able to tolerate walking. Totally different. And that one of the things that is also different is, how does it feel? What is the emotional experience of dealing with not being able to do something? Like, I know for me, I've been sitting here with my foot and I've been feeling, at times a little frustrated with the fact that it's difficult for me to go out. I'm not leaving the house to go to work. And that is something that I guess it meant a lot more to me than I thought. Because I've been really, really wanting to go back and work and do things that feel productive and alive in that way, where there's other people around and there's other people doing stuff, and I get to feed off their energy to my benefit, because I'm selfish like that, as we all should be. And we go on like that. And it's been difficult for me to try and generate the energy to be productive in a way that fits what my limitations are right now. And, speaking of it that way, I hadn't actually, this just struck me right now. We all have limitations as clarinetists, in where we are learning the clarinet. And that is okay. Part of what we need to do in terms of learning is understand our limitations to figure out what we're working on within those limitations, but also how to change those limitations so that they don't continue to be our limitations. It's deep stuff I just thought of right now. The other thing that is, let's go into what I'm calling courage in the unknown. Like, we have to face this sort of idea of being okay with being uncertain. Like, I know, intellectually speaking, that the doctor said, okay, well, I'll see you on the 27th, and then we're going to take x-rays, and then here's what's most likely to happen. It's known what traditionally happens, but my experience isn't that of telling somebody what's going to happen. My experience in this situation is feeling how important it is to me that this all works out in that way. But I don't have any experience in this, right? And there's no way that I can know something like that. I can believe something like that, but that is no substitute for the direct experience that the doctor has of how this is going to work out. But he is not actually having the direct experience while he's telling me that. So it's an interesting way to think of how it is that people are having this emotional response to this thing. And that gets more complicated with the clarinet, because hopefully you are getting advice from an expert. There's multiple ways to get advice from an expert. Wouldn't you know it, one of the ways you can get advice is through the Clarinet Ninja Dojo. That way you get advice from me. My advice, I would say it's good. But here's the point, is that you can have a private teacher, or there's ways. I wouldn't suggest it being the only way of watching YouTube. I've made a lot of YouTube videos. I think they're great. But what they are not is personal. They are general, very good, I believe, ways of talking about how to play the clarinet and ideas that you can add into what you're already doing. But that what you're already doing, if you're learning the clarinet, should be somewhat supervised, at least, so that you know that you're headed the right direction. Because doing it on your own, without an expert, that uncertainty is very, very, I would call it dangerous. That leads into what I'm talking about, the courage of the unknown. Like for me with the foot, the unknown is kind of in the abstract, because intellectually speaking, well, I guess it's all abstract, but intellectually speaking, I know what is going to happen. Like, I know that my bone's going to heal. It might take more than I wanted to. It might be, I may have a lot of feelings along the way, but the doctor has told me percentage-wise what the odds of this happening are, what the odds of it re-breaking is. I get it. I can understand those numbers. I basically intellectually know what's going to happen, but that does not mean that I don't feel things along the way. I feel a lot of things, emotionally speaking, because I follow the doctor's advice. I haven't put any weight on this foot. It feels fine at the moment. I know when I'm going in for the x-ray, I know likely what his response is going to be. Okay, but I'm still kind of alone in my emotional response to all this. With the clarinet, there's more unknowns, and that's why it kind of is more important to have somebody shepherding you through this. We're going to get to that a little bit more later. But I want you to think about the hero's journey and what the behavior of a hero is. It is facing uncertainty. It is going into a situation where there's no defined outcome and finding a way to navigate that journey heroically and with courage. And there is a lot about learning an instrument where you're venturing into the unknown. It's not unknown to everybody. It's just unknown to you. And I laugh because I still feel like that with the clarinet. And that's actually one of my favorite things about it. And I want everyone to sort of like pick that up, like have that be your favorite thing. I like I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen next. That is kind of the fun part about it. And it is fun to be a hero in that way, right? To have the courage to face this, with joy and a spirit of exploration and enjoying the journey and enjoying the process and recognizing that, yes, I'm taking this very seriously. I'm taking this journey very seriously. But at times, it's important that I don't take myself very seriously with this. And that's something that's gotten me through a lot, because I take the clarinet and learning the clarinet and playing the clarinet very seriously. But boy, I don't take myself that seriously while I'm doing it. And I think that's an important thing, right? To have courage in the unknown parts of all this. In order to help you with that courage, in order to help you with that journey, it is important to have expert guidance, right? Someone needs to tell you what to do. Someone needs to help you assess, because a lot of what needs to happen is develop an ability to self-assess. But that's a lifetime journey for everybody. And I still go play for people and they tell me things, and I take that in and I use that as a tool to refine what I think is already a pretty refined ability to self-assess, because it never ends. It can't end. Otherwise, this is no fun anymore, right? This is an infinite process, which is quite a bit different than the process of having a bone heal. In the idea of having expert guidance, it is important that that expert understands what it is that you want. I don't think any expert should be teaching a person based on some sort of abstract idea of what it is that everybody wants in the clarinet. Everybody wants something a little bit different, right? Everybody wants to use this in a certain way. Everybody has a particular challenge that might not exactly be the same challenge everybody else has. And the expert needs to be able to look at that and figure out what is it that this person needs to do as a clarinet player to get the desired result that they want. If they want to play in their church in an orchestra, what if they want to go to jam sessions and play the clarinet and play jazz? What tools do they need to use to build their clarinet playing and their musicianship into those skills? And I think that that's a really, really important part of finding the right expert for you, right? Because personalized help matters. I did not go to see an ear, nose, and throat doctor because I broke my foot. They would probably have some good information for me, most of which would be go see a doctor that specializes in this, but they would know they would know something about it, right? They've been to medical school, they know something about this, but they're not going to be able to help me in that way. And I think that's an obvious one, a very noticeable one. One of the hurdles that adults have is a well-earned belief that they can learn things on their own. And I don't want to dismiss that as a grown-up person, you have done amazing things. I don't want to get all self-helpy. You've done amazing things in your life. You have, and you should feel proud of those things, and you should. But my point is this: that does not necessarily mean you should take this on your own and believe that you and your intellect can translate that intellect and understanding into ability. And there's a number of reasons for that. I made a lot of YouTube videos. I think they're all great, and there's a lot of great YouTube videos out there. But here's the thing: number one, without experience, you can't determine for yourself whether that's really good advice. Number one, a lot of it is. That's actually not the biggest problem here. Not the biggest challenge, I think is the better way to say it. But the biggest challenge is knowing when to employ, or deploy, perhaps is a better way to say it, any of these skills or exercises. Because these are for particular places at particular times when a particular thing is trying to be learned. And this may be too remedial for you. Most of the time, nothing's remedial. When learning the clarinet, you can go back to lesson 1 and still find a reason to do it. But this might be too advanced. This might require things that you don't quite have aligned yet, and that's totally fine. it's totally fine as long as there's someone there to say, hey, yeah, not yet. We're going to get to that. Not quite right now. And the expertise it requires to be able to guide you in that way is something that's significant and takes a long time because, like I said, there's a lot of moving parts in this, and someone needs to be able to assess all those moving parts all at the same time to say, yes, right now, this is what's going to build your playing the way you want it to right now. The particular break I had in my foot, I don't think was that personal. I think it was pretty common. The solution was a common solution. And that's something that is quite a bit different. It does take an expert because I don't, like I said, I don't want an ear, nose, and throat doctor operating on my foot, and nor would they, let's be honest. But my point is this, even if they would, I don't want it because that's not the right person at the right time. Speaking of the process and the guidance, even with great guidance, there's only so fast one can learn the clarinet or any other instrument. It does take a certain amount of time, and it's like terminal velocity. If you drop a penny off the Empire State Building, it will only go as fast as the resistance of the air will let it fall. That's an important thing. I can't speak any more about terminal velocity, and if I've said something wrong, please accept the general notion of that idea, right? Which is there's a fixed amount. You can wish all you want that penny can fall faster. It cannot. And that's the point that I'm trying to make because, when it comes to my foot healing, it's only going to go as fast as nature allows my bone to heal. And there's nothing that I can do about that, by and large. I'm sure that there's maybe some sort of supplement I could take that could speed that up. But here's what's not going to happen is the doctor's not going to take an x-ray before the time he says is the right time to take an x-ray. And he's not going to okay any of this. And because I'm trusting the expert guidance, I need to do what he says. And that's how long it takes according to him and or her. In my case, it does very literally happen to be a him. I don't mean to make gender a thing, but I did want to acknowledge that I said him, and maybe that's not cool. But in my case, it actually does happen to be a him. So speaking literally, that's what happened. So I do have to understand, I can't make my bone heal faster. And clarinet playing can only be learned at a certain speed. You can improve as fast as someone can improve playing the clarinet. But that's all you can do. And it may not seem fast enough for you at times. And it may seem that that's unfair and that you should be able to do something about it, but you cannot. The thing you can do to make it go the fastest is get the right expert that can look and look at what's happening, hear what's happening, and has, a lifetime of experience knowing how to, tell you what it is that you need to do right now. And then again, that's the fastest way, but it's still very much could seem like it's not fast enough. And that is a feeling I know really, really well. It's funny, when I stop and I think about, and I've had a lot of time to think, and I've done a lot of thinking about my own playing. I've done mostly thinking about how to help other people, and particularly adults, learn how to play the clarinet. But I've done a lot about my own, I've sat and thought about, lots of different performances, lots of different learning that I've done, and to think geez, how could I have made that faster? And honestly, this is the truth. The only way I could have made it faster was get a different expert. And there are certain experts that I know when my playing had its nonlinear growth where it just exploded. And I also know the moments where things got held back. And that really has to do with the particular expert. And I'm not going to name names. I will not do that. There is a lot of feedback that comes when you play the clarinet, and it does take an expert to hear that and then tell you what to do. And so that expert is doing two things, assessing and giving directions. And it's really important. It's really important that expert be skilled at those things. I know someone that's really good at it. Me. Another one of the main things that I see with all people learning how to play the clarinet or do anything. And I'm thinking of myself when I am trying to learn how to do things. Mistakes are learning opportunities, for sure. Mistakes are only really a problem if you are doing a performance. Even then, our performances are part of our learning. That's the thing that's different about the clarinet, is that there almost is no final stopping point. Our performances are miniature stopping points where we stop and have a moment of sort of deeper assessment of where we are and what we're doing. And it's a share out with the world but it's not necessarily something that, it's not the end. I mean, we're going to play again, and we take what we did in that performance and we learn from it. And that's an important thing. But let me get back to my main point, which is that the best thing that can happen to you, honestly, is if you go to your expert, you go to your teacher, and they can see what's going wrong. We all want to play really, really well in front of our teacher. I know that experience very, very well. One of the things that happens is if we are able to hide our deficiencies in front of our teacher doesn't get to hear the deficiencies in a way that they can help the most. And so what you want to do is you want to go play your best. And if your best includes problems, even better, because then that way your chosen expert can help you solve those problems. Keep that in mind. Mistakes are what they show us what we need to learn, and they show our teacher or our expert instructor what it is that they need to help us with. And I think that that's an important thing. Every mistake you make is really an opportunity for future improvement. It's not more than that. It's not less than that. It is just that. Learning is being able to identify something that you want to change and then developing the skills to change that thing. That's it. There's a lot of moving parts to it. I mean, that's just like the general overview of it, but that's really what it is. And then you open the hood, and then you start. Then you see this complicated engine with lots of hoses and stuff. And then that's where the expert is important, right? To be able to help work that out. To use that analogy, one of the things that is important in all of this is kind of bridging the gap between the desired outcome and the real outcome. That's something that never really changes. Like I was talking about earlier, that is the horizon that extends one step further. When you take a step, your horizon extends one step, and that's something that never goes away. I want to tell you a brief story about a luminary player that I studied with in Los Angeles. I was studying jazz at the time. This is a person that you've heard them play in the movies. I'm not going to call them out who they are, but they are big in the commercial music world and in the jazz world. And one of the things that he said, I would hear him play on the radio in the car, so I'd be listening to KLON 88.1 Jazz Radio, and I loved it. And you get to hear all sorts of music that I wouldn't have selected for myself, but I was really glad to hear. And so anyway, I would hear Gary play on the radio, and I would come into my lessons very excited, be like, "Hey Gary, I heard that album that you did with so and so and so and so and so and so." He goes, "So where did you hear that?" I said, "I heard it on the radio." He goes, "Well, how did you know it was me?" And I said, "Well, because clearly it was you, because you could hear it was him." And he said to me in one of these conversations, he says, "Jay, sometimes I hear myself play, and I can't believe I played something that stupid." And I thought to myself, oh my God, I guess this never ends, right? I guess there's never a moment where you get to feel like, oh yeah, kind of nailed that, right? Because then the learning stops, and that's the cycle of this, right? It's like if the learning stops, really this is done, right? Then what are we doing here? But this person played so well, such a wonderful, really wonderful jazz player, famous jazz player, and still his self-assessment was, I can't believe I played something so stupid. So just keep that in mind. There is always going to be a gap between your desired outcome and your real outcome in that moment. And this is pronounced, from a learning standpoint. Kids, number one, kids don't have a particular desired outcome when they're playing the clarinet. They're familiar with the real outcome, but mostly in comparison to the person sitting next to them in band. Their scope of what they're looking for is pretty small. Their clarinet world is small. They know what they can do. They know what the person sitting next to them can do. So they don't really have that much of a desired outcome. But adults do, because adults they're coming to this because they've heard something and they want to be able to do that thing. That gap can feel huge in the beginning stages for adults because there is this sort of dissonance between what it is that they know can happen and what it is that they're able to do. And it's a very frustrating thing, right? And so we have to look in the progress, from that. And I should attach this to my foot. I haven't talked about my foot in a while. That's not even really a part of the process of getting better with my foot, is that my desired reality is to walk again. The process interrupts the ability to check that reality, right? Because if I do, I'm going to maybe potentially break my foot again by walking on it when it's not completely healed. So I cannot have that reality check. So this is sort of null in the foot world. But I'm enjoying talking about the clarinet. Where does progress come from when it comes to learning the clarinet? The more clearly we can identify what we want to sound like. And that seems like it should be easy, but it's not. And it does take actually learning the clarinet to help refine what it is that you want your clarinet to sound like. In a very detailed way, we need to be very specific about what we want the clarinet to sound like. We need to hear our tone, we need to hear the dynamics, we need to hear the phrasing, we need to hear all of that. One of the best ways to do that is start to play the clarinet and then hear those things. It really opens our ears to hear those things in other people's playing. It can make listening to recordings a much, much different thing. Going to a live performance, a much, much different thing, because we have a much different insight into that, right? And because the whole idea is to hear it in your ear before you play, right? And that's something that's really, really important. Getting back to how kids learn, their motivational things are generally speaking external. The primary one is their mom or dad wants them to learn this instrument. Then the next thing comes in how are they doing in comparison to their peers. And we set that up in the educational world a lot, right? Because, there's All State, there's All City, there's, Solo Ensemble Festival. And here in New York, we got that's called NISMA. And so there's ways for kids to get graded. And in school, like my school happens to be pass-fail, but a lot of schools actually have grades. So there are ways in which there's an external motivation. Adults don't have the external motivation most of the time. Well, there is external factors, but mostly it's an internal pull. And that's something that is really important. And the other important thing is in this learning process is that the intellectual understanding, while it doesn't on its own translate into ability, it can accelerate the learning. Again, going back to the idea of having an expert that understands how to leverage understanding into ability, because it won't happen on its own. And it's very hard for even a very smart, very intellectually, gifted person to take the information and then develop a skill. There's too many moving parts for that. I want to address something. I'm acting like you just said something to me, and you probably didn't. When we talk about learning clarinet as an adult is something that's difficult. And that's somewhat true, because there is one part about this that's difficult, and that's kind of our motor skills. Our motor skills, it's sort of our language center. I think maybe I've talked myself into two things, because playing music is somewhat similar, if not totally similar, to learning a language, and our ability to learn a language is definitely more honed as a child than it is as an adult, and our fine motor skills are a little bit more challenging to develop if we haven't developed them in another arena when we're learning the clarinet as an adult. But those are the only two ways in which this is more difficult. And I would say in terms of the associating this to language, that's where the understanding can be leveraged, right? In a very, very particular way. That's too pedantic and detailed to talk about right this second, but your ability to understand as an adult is actually a point of strength that can outweigh the challenges that adults tend to have learning music. It is important to put your trust in somebody else, because there's a certain amount of giving and trusting and being vulnerable in a situation that is different than we're used to as adults. And that goes, again, directly into the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is not doing this alone. There's two things. Like, you can't do it alone, and that you need an expert to guide you, to get your best. There's another way of not doing it alone, which is community. Kids don't learn alone. They learn in a group. They learn in band, and then hopefully they go practice on their own at home. They don't usually, but that's the idea. So, but a lot of their learning happens in a group. And what I was thinking, not even just thinking, but living this experience of having a broken foot, I elected to get surgery on my foot, and it was interesting to me when I talked to the person they called the day before the surgery, and here's what you need. You got to have this, got to do this, got to be here this time, blah, 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 blah. And then you're going to need someone to pick you up afterwards. And I'm sitting there on my couch, foot up, as instructed. And I just thought to myself, I don't have any friends to pick me up. I don't have anyone to come pick me up. Like, I literally almost started crying because I didn't think that I had that particular support system set up. They said, well, you're going to need someone to come pick you up. And so I said, okay, well, I hope I can work that out. So I hung up the phone, and I sat there by myself for a second on the couch, and I thought, what am I going to do? I thought, well, maybe I should just cancel the surgery. Maybe I should just because there is a world in which this will heal on its own. I think it was a higher chance of failure, which I didn't want to take. Anyway, long story, not important to this. But my point is this: I didn't know what to do. I thought about people that might be able to come get me. I thought of 4 people that might be able to come get me, but some of them I hadn't even talked to in over a year. And I texted them, and they all said yes. And I was overwhelmed with what that support meant to me. And as it turned out, I selected my friend Frenchie of the 4 people that were kind enough. I mean, some of them couldn't come till later, and some of them lived further away. And quite honestly, there was a couple people that I know would have gone way out of their way to come get me, and I didn't even ask them because it would have been such a colossal pain in the butt for them. But my friend Frenchie came. I haven't seen Frenchie in like a year and a half. I can't tell you what it meant to me to have a friend. I didn't know it was my first surgery. I didn't know what a big deal it was. I didn't know my leg was still going to be slightly numb. I didn't know like what kind of position I was going to be in. I had been immobilized basically for a couple weeks at that point, but this seemed somehow or another different. I had a cast in my foot. Thank God Frenchie came and picked me up, and we had a coffee and sat and talked for a while, and then I got an Uber and went home. My kiddo came over that night and sat with me, and we played some video games. It was super fun, but without that support, that's an isolating thing. And this is what I want to get to. That really struck me. Like, I needed my expert to do the surgery and to guide me through what it means to heal this bone, and I needed the support of people that cared about me and cared about my progress and cared about the process of this. That was the whole world to me, and that's something that kids have when they play the clarinet. Adults traditionally don't have that. The adults tend to learn in isolation. And there might be a band that they play in, but it's not a band of people that are all learning the clarinet together, all learning their instruments together at that same point. It's not a learning opportunity collectively like that. It's the idea is to put on a performance, not necessarily learn in that same way. And so that's one of the things that I think is really special about the Clarinet Ninja Dojo is that it's a community. Our meetings are all together. And to see the support that is given and accepted and what that means to see somebody struggle and overcome, and then the support and excitement that comes from the community. But then, what do you get from watching somebody overcome something that was a challenge for them? Well, you get to see that this is a challenge, right? And that there's no shame in that challenge. Because I've got to tell you, there is a certain amount of shame that I think a lot of adults feel in not being good at something. My therapist the other day told me shame needs an audience. And, if you have a community around you, the shame goes away because you see that the person that is as a challenge and overcomes should feel no shame. And then when you can identify that that's you, that's powerful. And the people that have shared these challenges have shared this progress together. It takes on a life of its own and creates bonds that are really amazing. And I didn't know that this kind of thing existed until the pandemic, and we had to start teaching online. And now that I see the power of it, I see what an amazing thing it is. And let me just keep plugging the Ninja Dojo for a second, is that you can take private clarinet lessons and still be a part of the dojo. Or you can have the dojo work on its own. It works great on its own. If your immediate thought is, well, I've already got a teacher. Cool. The dojo doesn't mean you need to stop that. It's just another way. I mean, like you can have a private archery instructor and still go to community groups and classes and celebrate and learn and do your archery in other places. It's all very, very possible and probably good for your education. So sometimes, like if I'm at the clarinet convention, somebody will say, "Hey, I saw one of your videos. I want to get your input on this exercise." And so I'll listen to play the exercise and I'll think to myself, "Yeah, it's not quite it. Let me tell you a couple things." And then when I tell them those things and the light bulb comes on and they get a personal response to what it is that they're doing with the exercise, all of a sudden it's like they have it's like when Popeye eats the spinach, right? And then all of a sudden he's got muscles, right? Because all that work that they'd been doing that was a little bit not right on the exact right track, all of a sudden they see it and they can feel it and they can do it. And that's something that is amazing, because then all of a sudden that's one of those nonlinear moments where all of a sudden something just gets unlocked and appears as if from nowhere. Those are special moments. But it comes from somebody getting frustrated, right? It comes from somebody trying to do something and not quite having the ability to self-assess and identify what it is that they're doing and what it is that they should be doing, and what ultimately is a very small difference between those two things. And that's one of the things that good expert instruction gives you, because it is definitely hard for people to assess what they need in a moment. Consider the idea of a support system. The healing of a bone, for me, definitely took an expert, definitely took a community to help me. The community is a powerful thing. So let me just go ahead and finish the plug since I started it. There's two groups in the Clarinet Ninja Dojo. One is for people that are just getting going, just coming back, or are in the sort of beginning to intermediate stages of the clarinet. And then there's one for people that are playing like Rose etudes or Cavallini or Uhl, any of those etudes. If you're playing a Weber concerto, like that, people that can read music very well, that have played the clarinet for a while, that have studied it maybe very seriously at some point in their life, something like that. So that there are two different classes. The advanced class only has 12 possible seats in it. It's not full. Go to clarinetninja.com. Check out the dojo. Is the button you click. Check it out and see what you think, because I will tell you that good advice and good community is going to work out well. Just like, I'm hoping that in tomorrow I get to start walking again. That's my date to get my x-rays, and I'm excited about that. To just tie this up, it's been an interesting thing for me to sit at home for 6 weeks, basically, so far. The only time I've ever sat at home like this was March 2020. And we all did, to a certain degree. The quietness and inability to do the things I normally do really showed me what was missing out of my life and what that meant to me and what's meaningful. And here's what's wonderful. And I feel kind of proud of this, and I feel very happy for myself. So good for me. The thing that hasn't changed in my life is I can sit in front of the computer and work with the dojo. And that community also helped me persevere through all of this. It's something that has a product that is greater than the sum of its parts. And that's a really, really special thing. And playing the clarinet has a sum total that is greater than its parts as well. There's really nothing that can mimic what it means to make air vibrate. That's what sound is. It's air vibrating. What does it mean to make air vibrate in alignment with others, or even on your own? It's like doing magic, and it's an amazing thing, and it brings a joy and literally and figuratively a resonance that has meaning, and it's something that when you have the experience, you get it. And with that, there is frustration. Let's not deny that. We've all had some frustration playing the clarinet. And the thing that I want to pass along to people that are adults learning the clarinet is I'm here, and I will be able to help you get what it is that you want out of the clarinet. I've played the clarinet a lot of places. I've played the clarinet at the Metropolitan Opera. I've played the clarinet at Lincoln Center. I played the clarinet with the Philadelphia Orchestra. I played the clarinet on Broadway. I was the clarinet player for the producers on Broadway for 6 years. I've subbed on 25 to 40 Broadway shows. I have played at Radio City Music Hall. I've played the clarinet, no doubt about that. But in addition to that, I have also done a lot of work learning how to be a fine educator. And in that, I have taken a lot of important classes and had a lot of important experiences learning how to teach kids. And now what that has done for me is allowed for me to take that framework and that process and translate it into what do adults need to learn? Because the question that I asked myself was, how is the learning profile of an adult different than that of a child? Because one of the things we talk about is differentiation in the classroom and what do different learners need. And so what I did was I simply applied that to, well, what if one of these learners is 70 years old and has a lot of intellect, and what do they need that's different than what these kids need? And the answer is, it's actually quite a bit. And so that, in addition to the things that I've done actually playing the clarinet, are the things that I have to offer you that I think is unique to me and something that I think people should take full advantage of. I hope hearing me talk about this stuff does sort of highlight how that can work for you. I can't wait to walk around and have my life change back to what it was. Hopefully, we'll be walking around the International Clarinet Association Clarinet Fest 2025 in Fort Worth, Texas, July 9th through the 13th. If you haven't checked that out, you should check that out. And if you come, and if you see me walking around, come up and say hello. Check out how well I can walk on my new foot. But then, keep in mind, also, that outcome is fixed. That outcome has happened. But you know what I'm still doing after more than 40 years is learning how to play the clarinet, because that process never stops. It doesn't stop for me, and it doesn't stop for you. So keep that in mind. Keep playing the clarinet. And if you have any questions, I'm here. Email me. I will respond. And I'll do the best that I can to give you whatever information might help you with what it is that you're trying to accomplish with the clarinet. Thank you for being here. Thanks for indulging me and letting me talk to you about this. Let's listen to a little bit more of James Danderfer as we find our way back into the regular world outside of the podcast. So keep playing the clarinet, and I will see you and hear you soon.